CIA raids in Iraq and Afghanistan, something that went beyond their contract with the spy agency. U.S. and Blackwater sources tell NBC News that while the guards were hired to protect CIA operatives in the, quote, heat of battle, they may have actually participated in the mission itself. The New York Times reported today the Blackwater guards played central roles in so-called snatch and grab operations during the height of the Iraqi insurgency from 2004 to 2006. A spokesman for XZ Services, formerly Blackwater, says, quote, Blackwater USA was never under contract to participate in covert raids with CIA or special operations personnel in Iraq, Afghanistan, or anywhere else. NBC's Jim Liklashevsky joins us live from the Pentagon. And Jim, as you've documented many times, Blackwater has a checkered record. This doesn't seem to be helping them.
Well, just the name Blackwater is a lightning rod here in Washington. And if you listen closely to that denial from the company spokesman, they deny that they were ever under contract. They don't actually deny that Blackwater operatives actually took part in any kind of covert CIA operation. And sources on both sides acknowledge that Blackwater was, in fact, hired to provide security for CIA operatives in Iraq and Afghanistan. In some cases, maybe even logistics, airlift, and in other cases, maybe even intelligence. But apparently what had happened, according to sources, is that, as you said, in the heat of the battle, after all, those Blackwater operatives and guards are former Delta Force, former Navy SEALs Special Operations Forces, and if they see action going down in which they could help the CIA or other Special Operations Forces, the natural tendency is to do that. And apparently that is what had happened. Now, there's no indication or evidence that we have found anyway that the Blackwater guards were actually trigger pullers or actually shot and wounded or killed any insurgents, terrorist suspects, or the like. But the fact of the matter is that they were involved at all raises some serious questions, particularly about accountability when it comes to civilian forces working hand in glove in kinetic operations with the CIA and Special Operations, David.
And Jim, what's been the fallout both at the Pentagon but also on Capitol Hill?
Well, you know, so far, the Capitol Hill already knows about this. You remember Leon Panetta suspended some of those, quote, assassination operations, which never really got off the ground. And some of that bleeds over into this Blackwater business. When the CIA director, pretty new actually, when he found out about this operation, he immediately went to Congress, informed Congress of the operation, said it had been suspended, and they're launching an internal investigation still at the CIA, and Congress is looking into it. But so far, we have no word that anyone has been given any kind of disciplinary or judicial punishment because of what happened here.
NBC's military affairs correspondent Jim Liklashevsky at the Pentagon. Jim, thanks for the report.
Okay, David.
And David, in the bigger picture, Blackwater's role in secret CIA operations highlights a deeper relationship between the spy agency and the private security firm than government officials have acknowledged. So what are the consequences of this kind of relationship? With me now, retired Army Colonel and MSNBC military analyst Jack Jacobs. He's on the phone with us. Jack, you know, these guys, they follow different rules of engagement. They follow a different chain of command. What are the implications here if these reports are true?
Well, they're all bad, actually. Anybody who studied military operations of any kind will point to the 9 principles of war which govern how one acts on the battlefield and successfully. And they include things like unity of command. Never permit people to respond to report to more than one person. Somebody has got to be responsible. And another watchword in the use of the military instrument of power is to make sure that with every bit of responsibility goes authority, and vice versa. Never give somebody the authority to do something unless it's specific about what his responsibility is going to be and what authority he responds to. Authority and responsibility go hand in hand, and you cannot separate them.
So listen, if these guys are after the bad guy, is that such a bad thing?
It isn't a bad thing to kill or capture bad guys. The problem arises when you mix civilian and military people. You have them reporting through separate chains of command, and some people, civilians, do not have any responsibility for any of their actions. This is almost wholly, but a result of the fact that we did not have sufficient numbers of people, military police in particular, security people of any kind in Iraq. And as a result, we had to rely on contractors to be paid to perform those missions which in normal circumstances in war would be conducted by soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, all of whom are responsible for their actions under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The instant you hand over responsibility for doing things to people who are not subject to any kind of legal constraints, you run into big-time trouble, and we saw that here.
Well, we do have a comment from CIA spokesman George Little. He says this agency, like many others, uses contractors in roles that complement and enhance the skills of our own workforce, just as the American law permits. Is that a fair argument?
It is if you're not in a combat situation, and I think he would be talking about circumstances in which we're in low-threat areas, and it's unlikely that any of these people are going to be engaged in any kind of combat action, but the instant you throw these people into combat situations where you expect soldiers and Marines to react, if you throw civilians into the mix who have the authority to do whatever they want without the responsibility that goes along with it, you're going to have big-time problems. We've seen that before, and my guess is the result of this and other activities which have happened with these and other contractors have convinced the CIA to stop doing it.
Well, Jack, do we know what role the Blackwater plays now? If it's no role, has there been private contractors to replace them, and should we be concerned about the same issue?
I think they're all private contractors. There are a lot of private contractors under contract with the government in a wide variety of security applications. Blackwater itself, I believe, has lost its contract to provide security for most, if not all, of the State Department. But I think what will happen is the following. The Congress will investigate it and determine exactly what contracts Blackwater and other security organizations have with the Defense Department in particular and scrutinize them closely. Most of them are innocuous. It's vitally important that we have some of these people doing things of a security nature, but throwing them in the mix in the middle of circumstances in which they can get into big-time trouble and are not responsible is bad news.
All right, Colonel Jack Jacobs, thanks so much for your expertise and your insight on the issue.
You're welcome.